I've been thinking a lot about this because we live in Southern California now.
Yeah.
And a bunch of different cultures here. And I find myself often when I'm referring to when I talk to strangers about my partner, Rebecca, I often refer to her as my wife.
Yeah.
And I know you tend to do the same thing with Mariah.
Only if I don't want people to dig deeper. And what I mean by that is that I just don't have time to explain. No, it's not. I mean, we're technically partners, but we've been together for 5 years. Probably not going to get married, to go in the whole explanation. So yes, to simplify things, I will call her my wife.
Yeah, I ran into someone. I was at the Salt Lake City airport this past weekend, and someone came up to me and they're like, "You look really familiar." And she's like, "What do you do?" And I'm like, "Uh-oh.
What do you do?"
Yeah, I said,
"What a horrible."
Yeah. And sometimes, if I want to avoid that question, I'll just say I'm a writer. Have a nice day. Although really, the thing that broke me of my habit of that is saying, well, I'm really passionate about writing, and to me, this is the sort of same thing here with the spouse thing. We get into these titles are important, but they're not so important that we should. It's just it's with politics. You think of someone, I'm a Republican, I'm a Democrat, I'm a socialist, I'm a libertarian. This is a set of beliefs or sometimes a set of ideologies or whatever. But to not polarize it like that, this is a table. That is a label for this. I have to label this thing so we can talk about these things.
Labels
right?
are very important to help us identify whether it's a thing or whether it's an abstract thing or whether it's a belief or whether it's a perspective or whatever it is. I mean, labels are very, very important. I think we get in trouble when we start to identify with those labels.
Yeah, when we give them so much weight that they mean everything, the label becomes more important than the thing itself.
Right. The term minimalism. I like to say I'm a minimalist for a lot of reasons. I think that it creates some conversation. I think, like you talk about a lot, it is kind of the most perfect word and the most imperfect word,
right?
Because it creates a lot of different reactions when you hear the word minimalism.
Feelings, emotions.
Yeah, but what that does is it creates a conversation. However, I wouldn't ever just give a response if someone here's a present. Oh, sorry, I'm a minimalist.
Well,
get out of here. That would be the wrong way to introduce minimalism to someone, first off.
Absolutely. Yeah, it would turn them off from the concept altogether.
Right. And then just, identifying with the label that way, really I'm kind of in that situation, using the label to kind of as a cop-out almost.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And as if it explains everything.
Right.
And the label doesn't. It approximates something.
They are, like I said, labels are very good to help us identify ideas and certain things, but that's just it. They help us approximately identify something.
But at the same time, rarely outside of these four walls in our podcast studio, shout out to the YouTube audience. Hello, y'all.
What up?
Outside of these four walls, rarely do you refer to yourself as a minimalist.
Yeah.
You are a minimalist. You're one of the minimalists.
Yeah.
You would call yourself a minimalist. If someone comes to you and says, "Are you a minimalist?" You're not going to say, "Well, you say, "Yes, of course I am." Mm-hmm. But it's not particularly useful all the time. However, there are times where it's the most useful label for something.
Yeah.
And today, when we're talking about these things, I'm going to sort of intentionally sort of conflate all of these. The catch-all term is sort of significant other, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because that can mean your wife or husband. Mm-hmm. It can mean your boyfriend and girlfriend. It can mean the roommate that you've been dating for a while.
It indicates that you've got a relationship with someone that is a romantic relationship.
But even that label itself is troublesome to me because significant is important.
Significant other or romantic relationship?
The significant other.
Okay.
Because even romantic relationship, we could talk about that. But the significant other, because the person is other, like Rebecca in my life is, you could say the other half or whatever, right? But it's more than other. It's a union. It's together.
Yeah.
And so it's not just other. And so there are problems with many of these labels.
Yeah.
But I found myself gravitating more and more toward this term wife. And I think the reason being, Bex and I aren't married. We don't have a set of religious beliefs that requires us to be married in order to cohabit.
That's the best response when people ask, like, "Oh, are you going to get married?" No, we're probably not going to get married. Why not? Just not that religious.
Yeah. Well, and then I also have an aversion to government mandated marriage too, because for so long
it's a little odd.
Government didn't let certain sets of people get married because they shared the same genitalia, and it's like, well, these two people have permission, these people don't have permission, and
it's like the government was the one mandating who could and could not be in relationships, basically.
Right, but which is weird because who started when you think about the beginning, the founding fathers, George Washington was not married according to the government. There was no such thing as government mandated marriage licenses back then. It was a covenant. And so really what we're talking about here is a covenant or a commitment to someone else. And does that require a piece of paper? Now, Ryan, you and I are business partners, and I'm sure we have a piece of paper that's signed somewhere in some file cabinet
somewhere.
But that means far less. I think contracts are backward looking. Right? This is something from Seth Godin. He's written about contracts. In fact, Podcast Sean, if you can find the essay about contracts, he talks about contracts versus handshakes. A contract looks back and it says, you know what? I've been hurt in the past. And you know what? I have been hurt in the past. I had a bad marriage, and it was bad because of me. I was the one doing the hurting. In the process, I was also battering myself. So I was hurt because of me. I picked the wrong partner for me, and we picked the wrong partners for each other. We figured that out over time. In fact, we're much better off now as friends, and we get along really well. And so I had a wife, and with that, I had a negative connotation with that for a long time, with the term marriage or with the term wife, because I was like, oh, this thing called marriage isn't going to work for me. And what was I saying there? I was telling myself this thing called commitment isn't going to work for me.
Yeah.
And that was there was a certain amount of trauma involved with that, and I didn't realize it at the time, but I had all these negative associations, not just with the union between two people, but with commitment. In fact, before I met Bex, I was pretty sure that I was not going to be in another long-term relationship. Like, it just wasn't for me.
Yeah. And
that's difficult to realize, but then you also realize, like, oh, maybe that's because I've been carrying forward some unnecessary baggage into my present life. So the contract looks back and it says, well, I've been hurt, so I'm going to sign this contract that doesn't allow this person to hurt me anymore. What a way to get into a relationship. However, a handshake or a commitment, that's what a handshake is, right? It's a commitment for the future. And I can say, I'm committed to you, Ryan, and our friendship, our business, and we can shake hands on that. We can hug it out and say, I'm committed to this. It doesn't require the piece of paper. The piece of paper itself does not equal commitment. And in fact, quite often, the piece of paper gets in the way of the commitment, because we can point back to that and say...
It's funny, man, because like these questions that we have coming up on the voicemails, it actually kind of reaffirmed why I don't want to get married. And I'm not saying every marriage is like this. This is a me problem.
Yeah.
So when I was married, I found, I don't know, I just found it very easy to care less about the other person, because for us to split up, she was really going to have to go through a lot of work in order to...
What do you mean?
And they'd have to get a lawyer. We'd have we'd have to split everything up. I mean, it was like this process of breaking up.
Division of assets.
Right. And it's not like at the time I was married, I was thinking, oh, she's stuck with me, so I don't have to worry about doing X, Y, and Z. It was this like subconscious complacency that was seeping in. And honestly, I didn't even know it until looking back on it. I was like, oh, like that whole... like waking up next to someone and first off feeling like, oh God, like I have to be here. Oof. Oh my God, like I've got to be here. And like
that's the contract
and
part,
we
right?
haven't really been getting along that well, but man, I can't really do anything about it. Well, she can't really do anything about it either. So it's like it becomes this complacent feeling.
It's disempowering.
I never want to have that again, man. And when I think about the questions that are coming up, some of them, at least one of them, to me, it seems like that might be what's happening in the relationship, where you've got one person in the relationship who really, really wants to do X, Y, and Z, and the other person just isn't having it. And if they weren't married, I guarantee it would be a different conversation. If someone came to, if that person came to the other person and said, hey, I really need this, really need X, Y, and Z to happen, and they weren't married, they're going to be like, oh, okay, yeah, I really like this person. Maybe we're heading towards marriage one day. What can I do right now to like really secure this relationship? Well, what happens, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years of marriage, I really want X, Y, and Z to happen. Yeah, too bad. I mean, I see that.
Too bad we have this contract.
Yeah, too bad we got this contract. I ain't doing that. And if you don't like it, then it's going to take you a lot of work to get out of this relationship.
Well, that's what you said was so profound there with the have to. I can't believe I have to wake up next as opposed to get to, right? Mm-hmm. And the it's contract thinking. And by the way, you don't have to have the contract to have contract thinking. There are some people who are in relationships who aren't married who feel like they have to be in it for whatever reason. I have to do this. And that's not real commitment.
No, it's not. And I can't tell you how many times I hear people say, man, if I could do it all over again, I just wouldn't get married. I just wouldn't do it. I mean, I've heard people say that a lot of times. And if for me, if I was in a relationship, especially in marriage, and I was thinking that in my head, like, oh, if I had to redo it, I wouldn't get married. What the hell am I doing in that relationship?
Yeah.
So again, marriage, there's nothing wrong with it. It's a me problem. This is not a marriage problem as much as it's a Ryan Nicodemus problem, and I have to live my life a little bit differently to live a meaningful life. And honestly, like, to not get married, that is more meaningful to me, waking up, choosing every day to be with someone rather than having to.
Yeah, commitment is really birthed out of that everyday willingness to recommit.
Yeah.
As opposed to like, well, yeah, we and by the way, you can do this whether you are married or not married. You're recommitting every day, every week, every month, every year to each other.
Yeah.
Or you can choose to say, well, yeah, 17 years ago, we signed this piece of paper. So the question you just asked, like, if I had to do this all over again, would I? Is a perfect question for minimalism in general. Every widget that we buy, every place that we move, every new relationship we bring into our life, if I had to do this over again, would I? And if the answer is no, well, then you have just found your new direction in which to travel, right?
Yeah, man.
I think about Jonathan Friends, and he uses the term spouse equivalent with his significant other. And Bex has assured me I shouldn't use that with us. So
why is that?
It just sounds so cold, right?
Spouse equivalent?
Yeah.
That's funny.
Yeah, so I mean, the thing is, I found myself slowly over time retiring this word partner. Both intentionally, but I found in order to be more communicative with certain people when I'm having these conversations, it's using the right verbiage. It's using the right dialect to describe what our relationship is like. And our relationship is much more like a marriage than it is she's not my girlfriend. But I mean, I'm approaching 40 years old. I'm a bit old to have girlfriends at this point. But it's a lot more than just the boyfriend girlfriend thing.
Age is just a number, man. It's just a number.
Yeah. Tell that to my back.
Yeah, it's so funny, man. I remember when Mariah and I first started dating, we were having this conversation because I wasn't comfortable with the word girlfriend. And
because is it you weren't comfortable because it signified too much commitment or up front?
No, for exactly what you just said.
Oh, okay.
I felt too old. So
because that's the thing too, especially with younger people, like I can't really call him my boyfriend yet or my girlfriend.
We're just dating because I'm sleeping with other people. Right. so I was explaining to Mariah, like, hey, exactly what you just said about being too old for a girlfriend. I was like, I really don't know what to call it. I guess partner. And there was a woman in the room, one of our friends. A friend of Mariah's family, and she was, she's probably 20 years older than me, maybe 15 years older than me. And she was like, at 30, you find it hard to, you say the word girlfriend. She's like, think about at 50, because she was, she dates and stuff. She's like, 50, I have a hard time saying boyfriend.
Yeah.
And it was right then and there where I'm like, actually, I don't care anymore about the word girlfriend, like, because it's just an age thing. Like, that's not the big video. But at the end of the day, man, at the end of the day, I always say at the end of the day.
He does literally, like at night before he goes to bed. He's like, "Good night, Mariah." At the end of the day,
it's the end of the day, Mariah. Good night. No, man. I mean, the fact is that I will use the word wife when I don't feel like someone digging deeper, because I just don't have the time or the mental bandwidth to explain why Mariah and I have been partners for 5 years. But yeah, dude, they are just labels, dude. That's all they are. They're just labels. And I think at the end of the day, go ahead, dude.
No, don't say it. No, I think where I'm at with this is what's appropriate, not just for me, but for the situation, right? And talking about these things, and really what's important is not the label itself. I call Rebecca. In fact, I'm probably the only person who calls her Rebecca. Yeah, everyone else calls her Bex or Becca, and that's the label I give her most of the time, is just Bex or Rebecca, and for me, that's an appropriate label. But what is really important here is not the label. You can set those aside. Whatever you're comfortable with, use that label, and forget what other people have to say about it. What is important is your willingness to be supportive, to be caring, to be loving, to be understanding, and to show that person how they want to be shown love. Yeah. And if you can do that, then regardless of whether or not you're married or you've just been dating for a week, you have found this partner, this significant other, this lover, this person in your life who is someone you want to love. And the labels are just that. They're labels.